Hi, everyone. Tonight we're joined by Jennifer Shahade, three-time national chess champion, to discuss her new book, Thinking Sideways: How to Think Like a Chess Player and Win at Life. Jennifer was the first female to win the US Junior Open. She's also a two-time Global Poker Award winner, has appeared on Jeopardy, and this is her fourth book. And by the way, here's the book, which comes out April 7th. And she was also kind enough to give me a copy of the beautiful international edition because I love the colors and the covers so much. So we're going to have a really fun evening today talking about the book, her career, and how we can apply strategies from the game to improve our everyday lives, even if you don't play chess, like me. So welcome, Jennifer. So excited to have you today.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited to chat. And hey, you really don't play chess at all, or you just haven't played chess in a while?
It's been a really long time. So I think I stopped playing around 10th grade, where I think my friend in high school beat me in like two or three moves. And I was so demoralized because the rest of my family is really into chess that I never played again.
Ah, okay. Well, maybe tonight is the night.
Yeah, I've been tempted. I've been tempted after reading your book. So yeah, to kick things off, the book started as something that you called Reset, which was about reimagining success, and ended up as Thinking Sideways. You've said that it's your favorite book and an intellectual hug to your readers. So what does it mean to think sideways, and how did you come about to write this book?
Yeah, around the time of the pandemic, I started thinking about my next book. And I was really passionate about writing a book that kind of debunks some of the myths that people have about chess and chess players. And one of the things that really came to mind for me were there were actually two things, but I'd say the two main things were that when anybody found out that I played chess, a lot of the times they would ask me, how many moves do you think ahead? And while sometimes I do think a lot of moves ahead, a lot of the time for top chess players, it's more about the options that you see. So I thought of this phrase, thinking sideways, that we don't think so far ahead, we think sideways better than our opponents. And then this also kind of coalesced with this other thought that I was having about the way that we celebrate success in chess, which is we celebrate the highest rated players, which makes sense. I mean, they put the most effort into the game, they have exceptional talent. But it occurred to me that there are these people out there who make such massive contributions in chess, but aren't necessarily the number one players. And at the time, I was actually thinking of two people in particular. I was thinking of Tunde Onakaya, who was at the time just starting his global initiative to like bring chess to children, especially in Africa and particularly in Nigeria, where he lives. And he since then has completely blown up. Like he's got millions of followers, and he's really been able to teach chess to like millions of kids around the world. So that was like really nice to see that he was kind of using his skill. He's a chess master, so he's using his skill in his chess beyond the game. And then also Demis Hassabis, who is the founder of DeepMind, and actually said that when he was 11, he was a very successful chess prodigy. When he was 11, he was playing in a chess tournament, and he was in a game where his opponent swindled him, and he was ruminating during the game of all the energy that everybody in this room was putting into this brain game and all the mental energy, and what if you could like harness that energy of brilliant chess minds and put it to something even more useful, which led him to quit chess and become, this incredibly successful mind. So yeah, that was those two threads were kind of like really uh, absorbing me over the years, and that's why it became thinking sideways.
I love that term. And I was going to ask you about the origin as well. So it's cool that you came up with it. Yeah, like was it like a spark of inspiration? Is it that you think sideways more often than others, or is that just something that all chess players do?
I think most good chess players do it. Yeah, it is true that if you think too far ahead, once in a while there are situations that are very linear, like in certain types of chess positions, but the majority of the time you can't really think too far ahead because you don't know what your opponent's going to do. So if you think like 5 or 6 moves ahead and your opponent plays something different on move 3 or 4, then the extra energy you use to kind of project move 5 and 6 is wasted. And so I'd rather put energy into like looking for fresh possibilities that might actually happen, which are 1, 2, or 3 moves deep. And yeah, that actually is quite common because chess players need to be very efficient with how we think. So, whoa, I knew that was gonna happen. My screen. Yeah. Anyway, exactly. So yeah, chess players have to be very efficient. So usually they are thinking more sideways than like super far ahead.
So tell us a little bit about how that translates to everyday life. I think people have this instinct that they feel like they have to know all of the moves ahead. They have to have a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan. How can we break that? And why is it valuable to think more like a chess player and only think a couple of moves ahead and respond to things as they come up?
Well, right now I think it's more valuable than ever, ever since the acceleration, extreme acceleration of AI in like the last year, where everybody is like questioning what the next, few months in their industry might look like, let alone like years ahead. So I think it's like super important to be like flexible, like a chess player, and to be thinking just like a couple moves ahead rather than trying to project too many. I mean, even if you look at what happened with chess and AI, we go way back with having the superhuman intelligence, right? We actually saw a computer beat the best chess player in the world 30 years ago, about 30 years and a month ago in my very own Philadelphia when Deep Blue won a game against Gary Kasparov. Now, Kasparov did win that match, but he went on to lose the following year in a rematch in New York City. And after he lost, he never got another rematch. But he probably would have won a year later, but a few years later it would have been over. And since then, the chess computers have gotten better and better. And so we in chess have had to learn how to use them efficiently. And I think now the rest of the world is feeling that same imperative accelerate the need to use AI in a way that makes you smarter, not duller or more average. And chess players have really been reckoning with this for quite a long time.
Yeah, that intersection between AI, chess, and like how we approach life is interesting. Like a lot of people are now outsourcing their thinking to AI or using AI to
Exactly.
help them make decisions. And I'm curious what you think about that. Like you've written about your experiences engaging with ChatGPT while you're playing chess. You've have some interesting observations about it in the book that I'll let you share. So, when do you think AI is helpful versus a crutch for thinking that we should avoid?
Well, it's interesting because I think one thing that a lot of people have observed about AI and that I agree with is the LLMs in particular are very good at meeting you where you're at. And therefore, if you're kind of new to something or beginner to intermediate level, they can be exceptional because they can do this like personalized instruction and information that is really useful. And so, what I found when I was playing these games against ChatGPT, and LLMs are not at all designed to play chess, and they actually play quite badly because they're trying to like pattern match and play moves that on average will be correct rather than like actually thinking in the way that like an AI like AlphaZero or a traditional chess engine like Stockfish would play. So they're pretty bad at chess, but they're not that bad. So they can still string together a lot of good moves. And what I found was that when I played my normal level, it tried to reach my level by cheating because I was stronger than it. So when I took its pieces, it tried to like take put pieces back on the board. And so I was like, well, this is weird. This is cheating. Why would ChatGPT cheat against me? They're supposed to be kind of sycophantic and like, trying to make me continue using it. Because this was an off the rack version I was using at the time. And it was a year ago, so it was ChatGPT 4. Although I think I had a similar result with 5 and also with Claude. Like this particular quirk uh, has been replicated in more recent models, although I do think it's less frequent. So they'll still, come up with these phantom pieces, but not at the same level of frequency. But anyway, I started to think about this, and I was like, okay, what happens if I play the worst moves possible? So I played like I was a reverse Gary Kasparov, like literally. For those of you who knew chess, I played the moves that would lead to the fool's mate. and or the scholars made. I would just play very, very bad moves. And so ChatGPT would checkmate me, but it wouldn't call checkmate, and it would actually let me put pieces on the board to avoid the checkmate that was there. So I realized, okay, so it's trying to meet me where it's at. And if I'm better than at the subject, it can't. So it tries to fake it. But if I'm really bad, it's actually helping me try to kind of come to that same level. And so I think that's kind of a way to think about it with education, that, if you're really, really new to something, it could allow you to ask really stupid questions that could help you, especially for adults who aren't in like a school environment anymore. But that once you get to a higher level, it's going to be probably less effective. And since then I've started doing some like chess experiments with Claude as well, which I find very interesting. A lot of people, having switched over to Claude, have found that they're able to use Claude to create little chess apps to organize their files better. In my case, I've used it to create little art projects. Like I've had art projects from the past that I've been able to make online versions of using Claude. So I think what it feels like to be mentally and intellectually challenged. I mean, you kind of know, right? Especially if you're a chess player, but certainly if you're a member of the Intellect Salon series. And so you want to get that feeling, right? And if you get that, and actually when I was, I have no comp sci background really beyond just like learning about AI and chess and working with it extensively to get better at chess and poker, by the way. I use AI a lot to get better at poker. Strictly prohibited to use either type of AI while you're playing. It's all about training, by the way. I want to be clear about that. So I've been more of like a practitioner, like a mental athlete, the way that I use AI, but I've never done any coding. But when I was using Claude for these like art projects, I realized I was almost taking like an intro to comp sci class, because it was teaching me things as I saw bugs and then I was debugging them, and I felt mentally exhausted from this process, right? And I was like, oh, that feels kind of bad, but also really good, right? Because you feel yourself getting more intelligent rather than kind of dumbed down. And so I feel like we know what it feels like to think. And so, yeah, try to do more of that.
Did you find it, you said you use it more for poker rather than chess. Is it more useful for learning poker versus chess, or is it because you're more of an expert at chess?
I think like AI for 30 years now, people have been using for decades. I mean, I guess right away, it was just when Deep Blue beat Gary, it wasn't like we were able to access a computer of that level immediately. But like within like 5, 10 years, we all had like laptops that we were using to train. I actually think AI training is even more effective in chess than poker. Because the thing about poker is that AI poker simulations are all based on the idea that your opponent plays perfectly. And in poker, that's a very, very dangerous fallacy. Like if I train all day against a poker player that supposedly plays perfectly, as we call it game theory optimal, and then I sit down and I play with somebody who doesn't play like that at all, I'm leaving a lot of money on the table. Like I'm really just like bleeding chips. I won't lose that much, but I won't be able to win as much as I should. And that's kind of the same if you think about it. Like if you're leaving tons of money on the table, that's like losing it, right? It's just not that you're actually coming away a loser. You're not coming away as big a winner as you should be. Now some people think that that's different, but really it's the same, right? So that's a big danger with studying poker with AI. Whereas in chess, it's not as much of a danger, because if you study perfect play and you still try to engage your brain as much as possible, you will get better and you will be able to apply it to almost any situation. So I think actually in chess, it's a little bit more straightforward, that as long as you're thinking for yourself, using the AI sparingly will be very helpful. Poker, it's a bit more dangerous.
Uh-huh. So I know the book is about chess. Do you think differently when you're at the poker table? Are there strategies from chess that you use there, or is it just a very different game? I'm saying this as someone who also doesn't play poker.
I think there's a lot of similarities. I think in poker, one of the key things is priorities. And also in poker, you can't, the time, it's much more fast paced. So prioritization is very important in poker. Like it's so many things that could be important. Your hand, the number of chips you have, the number of chips your opponent has, what they bet in different parts of the hand, what they look like, what time of mannerisms they're making, their exact bet size. But it's up to you to decide which of these things matters the most. And that skill is very important in poker and in life, right? Like the ability to prioritize. Because there are going to be like 50 different details that might matter, but which of those 50 are you going to base your decision on?
So how do you prioritize? How can we use chess to learn how to like whittle down our options, get better at prioritizing, when like in real life things can feel debilitatingly difficult or momentous?
Well, I think in poker, just to finish that point, in poker, I would say when you're trying to prioritize, you really have to look at what people do, not what they say. So like what type of money they put in the pot is the number one information. Like that I'm gonna tend to take the most stock in. The detail, like what they're saying, whether they're sipping their coffee or they're not sipping their coffee, it's like, okay, that's secondary. And I feel like the same way about life. Like whether somebody, you know, uh, says something is, not as important as what they do, right? Like, so watching how they actually act, whether they're supporting you, is going to be more relevant than, some kind of detail about like, you know, what they said to you last or something, right? And so yeah, that I think is really key in poker. And chess, prioritization, a lot of it is about trying to figure out. In chess and poker work a little differently. In chess, you have usually a set amount of time for the whole game, right? But it's up to you to decide when to use your time. So maybe I have 2 hours for the game, but on average, it's going to last like 50 moves, right? So I have to decide, should I spend 20 minutes on this move? If I do that every move, I'm going to lose on time. But maybe this is a really important decision, and this is where I should think 20 minutes. And then after that, I'll be ready to make bang, 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 a bunch of immediate decisions in a row. By the way, this is how a lot of the best players do it. They go really deep a couple times in the game, and then it's like bang, 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 confident, quick moves. Yeah. And so that requires a lot of skill in being able to sense what we call the critical moment. Like when is that time where you should dig deep and spend 20, 50, 20 or 30 minutes? 50 is a lot. That doesn't happen too much.
Yeah, I mean, I know that's tough because you have that great story in the book about Francesco Troyes, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, who spent like over 2 hours on a night move back in 1980, and he made the wrong choice, and his opponent asked, "How can you think that long when there are only two possible moves?" But it's so hard in the moment to figure out like, is the extra time helping you or not helping you? I'm curious what you think about that.
I mean, I think he froze clearly. It's like you get kind of trapped in like a circle, like, just you're just like thinking over and over again. It seems like some kind of frozenness. And it's happened to me too. Yeah, definitely. Like, I'm not for 2 hours. Gosh, no. Not for 2 hours, but for like, for definitely where you're circling. You're circling. Actually, I was going to write an article about this, about thinking in circles, about how like, you keep thinking in circles and eventually you find the right answer,
Yeah.
but no, that doesn't really.
I guess like if you get lucky, the right answer just arrives. Usually when I'm thinking in circles, it doesn't help me and I just need to go to sleep and hopefully the next day I'll wake up and break out of it. Um, but that does make me wonder, like, are there any strategies you use when you realize that you're like freezing or going around in circles? Like, how do you break out of it?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think that the crucial thing is to have an organized decision tree. So in my book, I talk about how chess players think about our candidate moves. And that is a key part of the process that some people don't do. So they kind of jump in, they look at a move and they're like, this is probably a good move. And they just start analyzing it. But the problem with that is that sometimes you get attached, right? You get attached to that move because it was the first one you looked at and you started analyzing it and you're kind of excited about it for some reason. So what I recommend people do is before they start jumping in and like looking five moves ahead at one move, make sure you're looking at the possibilities first, identifying your candidates. I like to say that you should look at least three. Sometimes you need to look at four or five. Once in a while, it's two, but three is a good starting point. Try to stretch your brain to make sure that you're not just looking at that first instinct, but one or two other moves. And this is especially important for new players. The better you get, the more likely the very first move you look at is going to be the right one. You know, grandmasters will often, first move they see will be correct, but even they often will check a few more just to kind of double check that their instincts aren't wrong, right? That they're not tunneling. And so I feel that step often gets neglected. But if you do that step, now you kind of have those three or four moves you're looking at. And a lot of times what you'll find is you only need to look a couple moves deep and it's going to be very clear to you which one is best.
Yeah, that I'll have to think a bit more about. I don't really make decision trees except at work, and I think I read that part multiple times, and I think I'll apply some of those strategies the next time that I'm thinking through a big decision and I find myself going in circles. Um, in that chapter, I think on decision making, you also have this line about beauty being in the past that we don't take, and that you have to revel in an occasional regret. I thought that was really beautiful. Can you tell us a bit more about that and how we can take comfort in something like that?
Yeah, it kind of starts from chess and poker that I feel like when you play a game of chess or you play a long day of poker, a lot of people want to end the day and say, like, I played really well today. I'm happy with everything that I did. And usually that's not true. Even if you played well, usually there's something you could have done better. And often there's just something that was more beautiful that could have happened if your opponent cooperated. It's not even like you played bad, but there was like this variation. Like one of the most famous games in American chess history was Bobby Fischer's game of the century. And while it was quite a beautiful checkmate at the end, there was an even more beautiful checkmate if his opponent had taken a different path, like a gorgeous smothered mate with a knight. And so to me, that like it's just like a reminder that sometimes what didn't happen is just as beautiful as what did happen. And there is this kind of multiverse where those paths occurred and you know, maybe took a different job, lived in a different city, married a different person, and you were maybe very happy, possibly even happier in that path. But that's not sad. That's just kind of a way to remind ourselves that there are more such futures in front of us.
Yeah, I mean, that reminds me kind of on a tangent about the part where you write about randomness, where you talk about people who've thrown dice or tried to use randomness to figure out either what they should do next to like break out of a holding pattern or to figure out what their true intentions or desires are. Can you tell us a bit more about that and if you've used that in your life as well?
Oh yeah, randomness is just really a fun mechanism. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Marcel Duchamp. I actually opened the book with him, and he was into the random as well. That sometimes, in order to kind of break our habits, it's really great to just use pure randomness. And the greatest chess player in the world, Magnus Carlsen, even said on the Joe Rogan podcast that he does this when he plays his chess games, that he sometimes uses the dice app in his phone to pick between openings. And it totally resonates with me. I get it because when I played professional chess, sometimes you're just up the night before a game and you're like wrestling with what to play. And that decision paralysis is in itself kind of stressful. So, you could ask your coach or you could just ask randomness. You could say, I've got a couple great opening ideas. Which one should I play? And it also makes you extremely unpredictable, right? Because if you don't know what you're going to do, and a dice is telling you, then how on earth is your opponent going to be able to figure it out? Poker players use the same methods. In fact, in poker, it's actually kind of a core part of modern strategy. Nate Silver talks about it a little bit in his book, and I feel that it's really integral to poker when you're playing at the very highest level. Because there are certain situations that if you were to bluff every time, you would be acting like a maniac and you would be like just giving your money away. But if you were never bluffing, you would be like way too conservative, tightwad, right? So like what you basically need to do is mix it up, like basically throw a dice and sometimes bluff and sometimes not. And it's actually crucial. It sounds like, oh, this is like some kind of fanciful thing, but it's kind of crucial at the top level. And so, yeah, to translate that to life, it can be so hard to get out of our habit. So some of the poker and chess players I know have used this in their real life to kind of break up their plans, like for where, even for something trivial like what restaurant to go to, or for where to go on vacation. And one poker couple that I knew used it to determine the course of their relationship, but with a twist. So what they did was they rolled the dice to determine whether they were going to break up, continue to work on the relationship. And part of the idea of this was that in constructing the mini game, it would teach them about what they really wanted. So if you're creating this scenario and like 4 out of 6 times you're going to continue to work on the relationships, and the other 2 out of 6 you're going to actually break up for or move out for a couple of months. Once you actually roll the dice, you kind of know what you want. And then also maybe like by writing it out, you can determine whether you want some other option or perhaps an 8-sided dice.
Yeah. And then randomness is also useful for, I think, getting into chess, as you suggested. I think you built chess roulette to help. I think we were talking about chess a while ago and how I'd stopped playing it. And I think you brought that up because that like reduces some of the paralysis you might have with regard to like what you do.
Yeah, exactly. That was one of the games that I was making for fun with Claude, because I made a physical roulette chess wheel many years ago with an artist friend of mine, and we displayed it in a gallery that was called Chance Aesthetics,
Yeah.
and Yoko Ono's work was there as well. It was pretty fun. It was many years ago though, and I'd always had it in the back of my mind, like, oh, it'd be kind of cool to have an online version of that. And but I don't have the time or the resources to like do that. But then, okay, when I started playing around with Claude, I was like, I can just like do this overnight. This is so fun, and it actually works as a game. I'll put it in the chat box actually. Yeah. Although it's, yeah, so you can just spin the wheel to determine what piece you move. So it adds this kind of randomness to chess. Although the AI that you play against is pretty bad at chess, so you might win. That's okay though. That
Yeah.
makes it fun.
That makes it fun.
Yeah. You'll see that there's an easy and a medium mode. I haven't created the hard mode yet.
Okay, I'll look out for that once I
Yeah.
work my way up. Um, I'd love to also pause for questions or comments if anyone has any. We can also keep going, but wanted to offer that opportunity.
Yeah, let me know if you guys have any questions. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Trey. Appreciate that. But I do read the Audible version.
Oh, you do? Oh,
Yeah, I read it out loud, which is super fun. And thank you,
yeah.
John. I don't know what version you bought, but I appreciate it.
Yeah, I love it when authors also read their own books. It feels more intimate and like you have a connection with the person more directly. Like you can hear them reading it out loud, so I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, it is. Sometimes it's torturous because I feel like in some of my books where I read the audiobook, once you read the audiobook, you notice some typos, and
Uh,
sometimes you read it and it's too late. But actually, I read my audiobook just before the American edition went to press, so I was able to like rescue 6 typos. Like it's funny when you're an author, like it really does feel like you're somehow like when you catch them, it feels so good. It's so good. John, you have a question?
Yeah, so I can't wait to read your book. I, like our hostess, haven't played chess in decades. I played it when I was a child. My uncle and my grandfather played it. I've got their set, but I want to read your book to learn how to think better and be a better human. But I've got a feeling that when I read it, it's going to make me want to get back into chess. So I'm really big into modern board gaming. And so I do spend a lot of time at a table with someone across from me thinking strategically and trying to figure stuff out, but it's new. It's not chess. So if I break out my chess set and my wife won't play with me, what's your recommendation on like if I just want to get back in and start learning again and enjoy playing? Is there an off-the-shelf product in terms of an AI or I'm sorry, I kind of got lost on whether the thing you were doing for the roulette chess was an answer to this, but what's your recommendation on how to get back into chess without another human? Over.
Oh, well, what about playing? What about humans online, like Lee Chess or chess.com? are great places to play against, all sorts of different types of games. You can play daily chess, which means that you get to like think for up to, 36 hours on your moves, or you could play like blitz chess, which is like 5 minutes a game. I think those are great. And then another thing that I really like that's kind of become more popular in the last like 5 to 10 years is there's a lot of like puzzle games you can play online. Like they have something called Puzzle Racer on Chess or Puzzle Rush on chess.com. And that's instead of playing against another human, you're actually playing against yourself. You're trying to solve as many puzzles as possible in a certain time limit.
Hmm.
And then like once you have your score, you try to beat it. And I really like that. That's quite fun. And
Cool.
so there's
Thank
all
you.
these different like formats that you can try that, yeah, have kind of blossomed with the chess boom and the interest in chess.
Thanks.
Morocco. Oh yeah,
So
WS says chess.com. You play there. Yes. Great place to play.
is that your favorite site or are there competitors? Like what makes a chess site good versus not so fun?
Well, I mean, there's really only two, to be honest. There's
Okay.
Leech. I like them both a lot. Like I go way back with the people who work at chess.com. I've known them for a very long time. And, I know I really friendly with many of them. And then I really like Lee Chess because I feel like Lee Chess is free and ad free. And so it provides like a place for people to play without ads, which is also a nice resource. So it's like you kind of have these like two mega sites. Yeah.
I feel like chess got really popular during COVID and after that. What do you think made it blow up so much?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. I talk about this in the chapter 5 of my book where I talk about ambition. I would have liked to write about it even more, but my editor claimed it was outside the scope of the book. But I squeezed it in. I squeezed it in. I love this topic. And I think it's because a lot of people assume it was because of the Netflix show, The Queen's Gambit. But I really think that's actually a secondary factor. I think the bigger factor was the smartphone, honestly, and well, the pandemic too. But the people spending more time online and particularly on their phones. Weirdly enough, the chess board was perfect for like the smartphone because what you have is you have like a digital asset that nobody owns. Nobody owns chess. It's been around for hundreds of years, so nobody can even try to buy it. And everyone can kind of make their own little chess set or play their own chess game online. And then you have a camera right underneath it. And it's all very legible. And these types of videos, this viral short vertical content started to go mega viral. And that made many young people more interested in the game, really all ages. But it kind of exploded, and a lot of celebrities started playing, partly because of chess.com's initiatives to kind of get more celebrities and athletes into the game. And so that kind of like spiraled it. And what I like to tell people is that before chess got popular, everybody used to say you can't make money from chess because you can't play for money, right? And you can't gamble on chess easily because first of all, AI will allow people to cheat if it's for money. But secondly, because everybody knows how good each other are, so it's unlikely that like somebody would want to play Magnus Carlsen for our thousands of dollars. They know that he's going to win. Unlike in poker, where you might play Phil Ivey and win a hand or two against him, right out of the gate. That's not going to happen against Magnus Carlsen or Hikaru Nakamura or me or any chess master, honestly. So that was supposedly the impediment to chess being lucrative and popular. But I feel like it actually flipped at some point because what chess has is the total lack of regulation, partly because there is no gambling, so we don't have to worry about age gating in the same way that we do with like games like poker or backgammon. And secondly, because nobody owns it, so nobody is trying to like, charge you money to like put chess in your reel or to like start some kind of tournament around chess. And so it actually is kind of tailor made for the attention economy. And I feel like once the attention economy became more lucrative and, more monetized and the algorithms became smarter about like, grouping people based on interests, chess was bound to be exploding.
I find it fascinating because arguably like it's a game that you have to be very strategic about and think through and it helps you improve your thinking. Whereas, like a lot of things that have monopolized the attention economy are things that fragment your ability to focus and think and be creative. So it's just fascinating to me that this bucks the trend of what we hear about the attention economy just ruining our lives, making us more distracted, and so on.
Yeah, it is kind of weird, isn't it? Although I will say the type of chess that you see in like 20-second reels is going to be less absorbing and less of a kind of flow state experience than the chess that you would play over the board against another human. Stephanie,
Hi, thank you. I'm really enjoying this conversation, by the way.
thank you.
Um, sure. So I play a bit of chess, and one thing that always stresses me out about the game is playing with clocks or the timers.
Yeah.
And Jen, I was just curious, how do you deal with that pressure or like knowing that because I feel like people kind of change when they know that they're playing against a clock rather than having all the time in the world to play a chess game. And I feel like that really changes the way you can think about the game and also just your psychological state.
It does
And
make, yeah, yeah.
yeah, for me, I get so stressed and like I freeze up and because I'm like, oh my God, like I only have this amount of time. Like, what do I do? And I'm curious, like, how do you approach that? And like, does your thinking process change when you know that there's a clock on you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think you get used to it. Once you become serious about chess, it just becomes part of the game. It's almost like another piece. It's like
Mm.
another dimension of chess, and it's there. It's kind of part of it because otherwise it would be unfair if you're playing like a serious competitive pursuit and you didn't use clocks. In fact, one of the reasons they needed to use them is that there was a world championship match which lasted like 22 hours, like one game, because
Wow.
people would just try to use the time in order to stall their opponent out, to think and think and think. And so they had to start using clocks because otherwise, people, I think actually think there was like people protesting because like they were at a cafe and like the workers didn't want to stay that long. So it was mandatory for this to happen because otherwise you would just have this taking advantage of the rules. But I agree with you that for players who are just playing chess for fun, the clock can add this unpleasant, hyper competitive element that kind of takes some of the joy out of it. It reminds me of how in poker, a lot of times they're starting to add clocks. And I played in a tournament in Las Vegas recently where in day one, we did not use clocks. And we were having so much fun. People were like making friends at the table, joking, like having like, some of the tables having beer. It was just a lot of fun. And then the next day they added the clocks and you had to make a decision within 15 seconds. And like now, like nobody's chatting and laughing. Like this is really serious. Like you can't, because if you start telling a joke and then you have to make a decision, you're done, right? So, I had to kind of like change from being super personable and playing poker to just being like that kind of chess playing athlete. And really, I think there's room for both.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
I mean, speaking of chess clocks, you also talk about how it can help us become more mindful and observe how we use our time and understand our relationship to time and elongate our flow states. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are talking about how they feel like their flow states are not as easily accessible in a world of like constant distractions, and that chess can help us approximate that state very easily. In fact, I really feel like that's like my number one reason why I like chess for young people, because for a lot of young people, chess is their first flow experience. It certainly was for me. Music might be one for a lot of children as well, sport, but chess in a way where it's like really like your mind, where you were just thinking about the game and nothing else, and you were tapping into that part of your brain which can get completely focused and see things that you wouldn't have imagined possible. And for me, I'm like, okay, they see how that feels and maybe they quit chess, that's okay, but I want them to feel that again in some other sphere, right? And so that classical chess experience, like the one Stephanie was talking about, where you're not worried about the time, that is very valuable. It's a really beautiful experience. And how can we actually use a chess clock to get more of those in our everyday lives? Well, the blogger and author Tim Urban actually uses it in a very interesting way, where he'll divvy up his day into two parts of himself. So when you look at a chess clock, it's like a double-sided clock. There's two parts because one of it is for me and one of them is for you. But in Tim's method, part of the clock is for his deep work and the other part is for his shallower, more administrative work or socializing. And so he does 4 hours and uses 4 hours for his deep work, and then he'll hit that side of the clock. And when he's doing something else, he'll hit the other side. I think this is really a beautiful way to kind of think about how there's all these creative ways to kind of divvy up our time. There's the very popular Pomodoro method. Personally, I feel like that one I've tried. I think it works for a lot of people. A lot of my friends swear by it. I didn't like it as much because for me, when I'm in a flow state, I would rather just like keep it going. I don't want to like force a break, right? But I did resonate with the other idea of Tim Urban's, and actually you can get a chess clock on your phone, and this is not as glamorous or aesthetic as an old school analog chess clock. I mean, those clocks are so beautiful. But the nice thing about using your phone for a chess clock is that then you look at the chess clock instead of your other notifications, right? It's just like that's there. That's what's on the screen.
Yeah, Pomodoro also doesn't work for me. I prefer just blocking off a couple of hours of time and just sinking into it and getting work done. With Pomodoro, I think the intervals are usually too short, and then I get annoyed when I have to take a break. But which reminds me of another topic that you talk about in your book, which is like knowing your strengths and figuring them out. And you talk about chess boxing, which I had never heard of before. It's a fascinating story. Tell us what you learned from chess boxing about like how to pay attention to your strengths or how to combine things that you might be good or mediocre at into a superpower.
Right. Well, chess boxing sounds like a joke, right? Like it doesn't sound like a real thing, but it is real. And it's been around for decades. And it all started with a German artist. His name is Ipe Rubing, who was good at chess and good at boxing and had this idea to combine the two into the ultimate fight where you're testing both your mental prowess and your physical prowess. So he found another friend of his in Germany who was also pretty good at boxing and pretty good at chess, but not like world class or elite at either. And they set up the very first chess boxing world championship in a old church in Amsterdam. 1,000 people came. It was like a really big like happening. He was a performance artist, so he kind of had these like networks of people who would come to such events. And he won. So he became the first world chess boxing champion. And what happened next was that it actually blossomed into a sport because he was so charismatic and kind of like talking about his invention and like continuing to make it into this sport. And unfortunately, he died rather young in 2020, but he's had many successors. In fact, there's an American chess boxing champion, Matt Thomas, who's been on 60 Minutes quite recently talking about the sport. And so there's still people doing this all over the world. And what strikes me about it is that it's this intersection of two things that Ipe was really good at, but not good enough to become like a world champion or a professional athlete at. But when you combine the two, he could become the best at it because there weren't that many people who were good at both of these things. And I feel that when we're looking at our careers and our passions, this is something that all of us should be doing, looking for our chess boxing, our kind of zany intersection of things that we can do that other people can't do.
Yeah, what would you say is your version of chess boxing?
Well, I actually did participate in my first chess boxing match the other day.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Oh, was it recently?
It was a chess boxing fitness match. So I wasn't actually punching another person. I was like punching mitts and like, yeah, it was so fun. I loved it actually. I really loved it because I felt that the boxing element, so you switch from like boxing to chess. So basically the concept of chess boxing is that you literally do rounds of boxing followed by moves of chess. And you win by either checkmate or knockout. The fitness version I was participating in was rounds of chess followed by rounds of like fitness challenges. And I loved it because I feel like the workouts get you into like a flow state. And I'd also created, again, many years ago with my husband, about 15 years ago, we created a hybrid called hula chess. I have an artist friend, Gabrielle Ravlock, who was using a hula hoop for many of her dance and artistic performances. And so she taught me about hula hooping and I taught her chess and we performed together hula chess. And it was one of my favorite pieces. And I felt like that kind of represented this intersection of two things that you would never think of combining together, but we could actually do at the same time. Because with hula chess, what we did is we found a table that's high enough that you could hoop underneath it. Actually, the original one, we hang the board from ceiling with chains. So that was really beautiful. So therefore, you could hula hoop underneath it and the board's here.
I love it. Your son also plays chess. How did he get into chess? Is he a similar player to you? Is he different? I'm curious because I know you also play with him. You have videos together. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, my son loves chess, and I was so excited about that. I wasn't sure if it was going to be true because sometimes kids kind of go in a different direction than what their parents love, but he did take to it, and he also likes the performative elements of it. So we do like instructional chess videos together on YouTube, and that's been really fun because he and I just like to have fun together, and he likes to make fun of me sometimes for my overly earnest questions. Like I like that about him. Like in the book, I tell a story about how I asked him about process-oriented goals because that's what you're supposed to do as a parent or an educator, right? You're supposed to not focus on the results and focus on the process. And so I asked him directly about process-oriented goals. And at some point he was like, come on, mom. You know why I like chess, right? Medals, ratings, and trophies.
Oh, I love it.
And that's typical Fabian. He's always saying stuff like that to me. Yes, John?
Uh, one, can't wait to read the book again. Two, not to blaspheme. Do you have any thoughts about Go versus
Mm.
chess, or Go and thinking versus chess? Over.
Yeah, Go is a game that I know some rudimentary things about, and I certainly love the documentary AlphaGo, but I haven't become proficient in. I will say that the chess players who do gravitate to Go often end up liking Go even more than chess. So yeah, it does have a lot of like really really big champions. The thing that chess has Go has more possibilities than chess, right? So that's one thing that people who love Go talk about. I guess one of the things I really like about chess is its history. So I feel like the history of chess is very rich and there's so many books about it. So really, really able to trace this lineage. Even the history of its rule changes, I think, is unbelievably prophetic and fascinating. Like in 1500, the chess queen used to be the weakest piece on the board alongside the bishop, which was also quite weak. And then in order to make it a little bit more coherent with the modern era and not take like 1,000 moves, and to improve the game balance, they experimented with the queen and the bishop, and the queen became the most powerful piece on the board, octupling in power. So she went from being like worth one and a half pawns to like 9 pawns, right? And they called this game the Mad Woman's Chess Game.
Hmm.
But then that's actually the game that we play today. So hundreds of years later, we play the Mad Woman's Chess Game. Now we just don't call it the Mad Woman anymore. But in a way, like that is still the game. Like she gets the credit for that.
Well, now I want to read a book on the history of chess. Recommendation?
Let's see. The history of chess. There
Or
is
do you recommend them in your book?
I
Or
have
mention?
some information about the history of chess in my book.
Okay.
But so you can start with that. Yeah. And
Okay.
after that, I feel like there's a book called The Chess Revolution that came out recently, which is pretty good. That one's pretty nice. But that's also about the culture of chess, the history and the culture of chess. Just the history. There's actually an entire book about the history of the chess queen, believe it or not, by a wonderful writer called Marilyn Yalom. I do think that unless you're interested in royal history of royals, though, it might, that is like half the book. Half the book is like the history of queens in Europe around the 1500s when the chess queen became the most powerful piece. So a lot of it is about like medieval and Renaissance history, not just about chess. But she goes real deep. It was real deep. But then one thing I actually write about in my new book, in Thinking Sideways, is that, because I'm a feminist and I love this metaphor of the mad woman's game. My husband and I also created art around this. It's just like it's like the greatest metaphor for the way that women who get power are often treated with backlash, called angry and mad, but then they actually make the world better. I mean, and it's a metaphor that's like lasted for hundreds of years. It's just like, I'm just so fascinated by this. And I've talked about it over the years. But then, when I was writing the last chapter of my book, where I talk about making games better, I realized that because I'm so obsessed with this angle, there was another angle that I was maybe neglecting a little bit. And that was the bishop. Because the bishop also became much more powerful in this time. And while that wasn't the show-stopping metaphor of the queen, it also really, really made the game a lot better. And the reason it made the game better was because the bishop caught up with the knight. So now both of these pieces were about equal value, 3 points each. And you have to kind of consider in every position whether you want to trade a bishop for a knight. Do you want to trade a knight for a bishop? It's kind of like a perennial question in chess. And this is a great metaphor for trade in general, right? Two things that are of approximately equal value, but are very, very different in character, right? So they have completely different properties, even though they're equal in value. And so, yeah, this actually deserves a lot of credit for making the game better as well. And it's interesting because this fact was something that Demis Hassabis, who I talked about at the beginning of the salon, took to heart when he was pitching Peter Thiel on DeepMind. So he knew that Peter Thiel, like himself, was a chess master, and he wanted to impress him and get him to invest in his, AI research tank, research think tank. And so research lab, AI research lab, which became DeepMind. And so he was going to this event in Silicon Valley where he knew Peter Thiel would be there. And he came up with this knight versus bishop as a conversation starter that he thought would tantalize him and get him to invest. And it worked. And, the rest is, of course, history, as DeepMind ended up moving to London and getting bought by Google. And now we, of course, see the tremendous consequences of that bishop versus knight conversation.
So you mentioned that chess has evolved over time. What are some recent changes that you've noticed, or does it happen on a much longer time scale?
Well, the rules are pretty much the same since then. I mean, there have been some minor changes, like the en passant came a little bit later, but really it's been like kind of uncanny how the classical rules have stood the test of time. The one thing that has changed, though, is that the time controls have sped up. They've sped up, and not only that, even the fast games are very prestigious. So even 20 years ago, people would kind of degrade the faster time controls as being like cheaper. Like, okay, like you're good at bullet, you're good at blitz, but are you good at real chess? Nowadays, people don't see it that way. They're like, well, that's a real skill. Just like in the same way, like you might award an Olympic medal to a marathoner or a sprinter, but you wouldn't say the marathoner is better than the sprinter, that they're doing real running and that the sprinter is doing fake running. No, they're both running. They're just different categories that different body types excel in, or different training regimes. Now in chess, it's a little bit different because honestly, the best chess marathoner is often going to be the best chess sprinter with some small variations. So there are some people who are better than one or the other, but in general, if you're good at like really fast chess, you're usually pretty good at slow chess too. So there's some variation, but not as much as there would be in something like running. But that's been the biggest shift, the respect for the chess sprinters. People really see it as a skill.
Uh-huh. I was also curious if people are using data more to play chess. So in many sports like baseball, people will like look at patterns and data to try to figure out how they should play. Do you see that in chess? Or is it more universal than that, you just have to like take each game as it comes?
Yeah, I guess there's always been like a focus on data. It's just a little easier to get. So now, before acquiring the data was more important. Like Bobby Fischer taught himself Russian so that he could read the information in Russian chess magazines, right? Whereas nowadays, like everybody has so much information that actually organizing it efficiently and figuring out which things are most important to look at, prioritizing is more important than being able to acquire it. So that's kind of more the shift in chess. Yeah. A WS, I don't know what your first name is, but you had a question?
Yeah, sorry, it's Wyatt. I have a question just philosophically, does the evolution of chess and the adoption by the masses here make you hopeful on the future with AI? I mean, the computer has beaten the player now for north of 20 years, and the player's never going to beat the computer. And I kind of use it as the perfect analogy of saying, the computer's going to be better than me at my job going forwards. But there's this beautiful renaissance of the game evolved and different things got people excited and distribution started to matter. So, just from a high level philosophical perspective, is like, is chess like the perfect thing to push back on all the doomers on AI taking over the world and kind of forcing us to be still happy despite the fact that a machine can play better than us?
I think so to some extent. I think when it comes to like art and education, yes. The one that I'm worried about where I don't think it's as clean of a parallel is jobs and wealth inequality and inequality because most, with few exceptions, chess is played for fun. Whereas when it comes to like some of the jobs that AI is replacing, those are real people with real incomes that are potentially getting devastated. And, obviously, I feel like that could be addressed by policy and politicians and, regulations and stuff like that. Right now, I'm not sure we have the right people in charge to kind of lead that. But that's why I'm not exactly a doomer because I think it is a challenge that we could be up to. Right now, I feel like we're not necessarily equipped, but hopefully we will become so quickly because we need to be. But yeah, that's the major difference I can see. But in terms of like creativity, I do feel like that one I really feel is I feel like we could be more optimistic because a lot of people are saying, well, AI can write well now, like it can write like not like the best writers, but it can write pretty well. Like New York Times had that blind test between Claude and great writers. Granted, it was a little bit rigged because it was just paragraphs, and a lot of people realize that these LLMs are much better in short chunks than they are in like longer threads, right? Like, if they have to keep a thread for a long time, sometimes they lose the musicality and the theme. But okay, so it's not that surprising to me that like Claude did as well, paragraph by paragraph by these like great writers. But I think it was worrisome to a lot of people. But the thing about it is that people do want to hear from a human. They don't want the AI. So if you disclose the fact that you're using AI to write your sentences, people won't want to read it as much. In the same way that if somebody tells you that they're playing a chess match and they're using a computer and the other person is using a computer, they're not really going to want to watch it. People want to watch Magnus Carlsen play against Hikaru Nakamura, or they want to watch Ju Wen-jun play against the greatest female players in the world, right? They don't want to watch AIs play each other. In the same way, we don't really want to watch AI write because we are interested in the human voice and the human soul. And so I think that, yeah, there's definitely some cause for optimism when you look at it that way, because there are computer chess matches, by the way, in world championships, but they don't get that much attention. Those are not the competitions that have like thousands and hundreds of thousands of viewers. In fact, two of the most watched competitions in the last 5 to 10 years were a celebrity chess tournament on chess.com called PogChamps with a bunch of players that were like rated about 1,000, which means some of them were like just hanging their queen on move 5. And then the other one was a famous streamer, Andrea Botez, playing a chess boxing match against another player, Dina Valenkaya. Like, these are the things that people want to watch. Real people, right? Sometimes very flawed people engaging in, I mean, not flawed as humans, flawed as, chess players, right? Like, just new to the game. And, seeing what what makes them tick on the spot. So for that part of it, I'm optimistic.
Yeah, I think there's an interesting tension there that I haven't quite reconciled, where people are spending increasing amounts of time talking to AI, engaging with it, using it for decision making. But if they infer that like they're engaging with AI beyond something that they consented to, whether it's like, I think I've heard of people not in wanting an AI therapist when they find out that it's an AI, or I lose interest in writing when I get the hit that the person didn't write it themselves. I haven't quite reconciled why that is, like why we're willing to engage with AI in some fronts, but when it comes to traditional like human arts or when we're seeking connection, we still prefer the human.
Yeah, I think we want it disclosed also. There's like a feeling of betrayal, I think, when people read something that they think is from a human voice, because they're kind of imagining in their head a human writing it or saying it. Like some people might hear the words in their head, and that it's that betrayal, I think. Yeah, I think that's a big part of it.
So as you were writing this book, were there any chess moves or strategies or lessons that you really wanted to include but couldn't because maybe it wouldn't work or your editor thought it was too obscure?
Oh yeah, there was a lot of things that my editor and I disagreed on, and 90% of the time she was right. So I got to say, like, they're usually right. And one of the things I'm really happy about in the final book is that somehow, even though in the beginning, as I told you, my thinking sideways inspiration was, that Tunde Onakaya and Demis Hassabis, and then also the way that we think sideways more than we think far ahead. As it turned out, and I started to write the book, every single chapter circled back to thinking sideways. So it kind of come up as a thread throughout the book. It was almost like magic. Like in the memory chapter, it's all about, thinking sideways and creating more connections between things that rather than trying to like remember long lists. And when I talk about ambition, it's so much about finding what makes you want to work harder rather than just trying to be like number one, because it's easier to do it if you're not thinking about becoming number one, right? And then when I talk about chess boxing, it's about finding these intersections, which is also a way of thinking sideways. And so it really threaded throughout the whole book, which I was very proud of. But the things that I wish could have included more on were just even more stuff about the chess culture, like cheating in chess. I put some stuff about cheating in chess in the book, but I had like 5 times as much on it. I had like a lot of insights into like why people cheat in chess and all sorts of stories of chess cheaters. And I did keep my favorites, but I was really fascinated by that topic. And
Yeah.
yeah, which is especially kind of the moment because of what we were talking about earlier about people cheating and using AI in their writing. It's like every day I read about a new scandal. Today it was like a New York Times book review that was, lifted. Part of it was lifted from The Guardian inadvertently because the AI spit out stuff from The Guardian without sourcing it. And then he copy pasted it into the article and then he got dropped by the New York Times. There's always something, right? And like those stories, I feel like really echo some of the stories that we see in chess. And I think what strikes me about it is that it's very hard for us to find proportional punishment in these instances, I think, because a lot of the times the people who cheat are very young, especially in chess. And so it's not like we want to ban them from chess for life or humiliate them publicly, but it's difficult to find the right balance there, I think.
Yeah, it's different from traditional sports where people will face a suspension or a
Yeah.
ban. But as you pointed out, chess doesn't have those regulations. It's pretty universal, like the age ranges that'll play. And also the stakes might seem lower because people are playing it for fun versus it being a professional sport. Do you find that cheating has become more or less pervasive in chess as interest has grown?
Oh, definitely more. I mean, just because there's more people and it's easier to cheat. So it's definitely become more pervasive. But there's also been like really good like cheat detection. Like that's the thing. Like as cheating becomes more common, the ability to detect the cheating is also higher. And one of the things that you see there is there's like a very scary surveillance culture. In order to catch cheaters, sometimes you have to have extreme levels of surveillance, which I'm not really necessarily comfortable with. Like, I think cheating in chess is very bad. But to give an example of a story where there was a chess cheater who was cheating with like a phone in the toilet, somebody barged in or took like a photo of him in the toilet, and he was cheating. So okay, at least he wasn't actually like half naked using the toilet. But the risk there, I feel like you're actually committing a crime in order to catch something that it might be fraud in some jurisdictions, but it's like no, that's like a serious crime, right? Like taking a picture of somebody in a bathroom. And so I feel like sometimes we have to keep our perspective of what we're willing to give up surveillance wise in order to catch cheating. And I think it's the same with LLMs, because people have their voice and their writing style, and if like you really wanted to, you could probably like create a writing DNA of each human being and detect whether they used any cheating. But like, would you want to do that? Because that would be very, very privacy invading, right? Because then anytime they posted something in Reddit, it would be possible you would know who they are. And a big hallmark of sites like that is this anonymity. So yeah, I think that's a question that comes up in chess now, and we're going to reckon with more and more. Stephanie?
Yeah, I have a separate question, but just on the topic of cheating, are you talking about online chess only or in person too? Because I'm trying to think like how someone would cheat in person. It would seem a little hard to do so.
It is harder, and it's much less common for two reasons. One, because it's harder. Two, because there's a lot of people who have this duality of online and live, where they think, and I think this is true in life too. Like, you might have some trolls use some nasty, nasty language against people, keyboard warriors, they might call them, but they would never speak like that in real life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that, I think that duality also occurs in chess too. The people are like kind of like let themselves go and show their darker natures online, but then in person they're like, oh no, that's like a church. One of the cheaters I talked to in the book, or former cheaters, reformed, described playing chess in person as like a church. And he's like, no, I would never cheat in person, but I did cheat online a lot. So it's like they create this duality that like being in the physical world is different than being in the online world, which I think is actually a bit dangerous, because we do a lot of really important real things online, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you
Mm-hmm.
did want to cheat in person, there's a lot of ways to do it. I mean, they're just much more elaborate. Like, for instance, the example I said of the person who went to the toilet, he hid a phone in the toilet. And again, like, it's funny because when you see like stories about mob, like in The Sopranos or something, you're going to see like a lot of conversations between mobsters in the bathroom, because they know that's the one place you can't tap because it's illegal, right?
Yeah.
You can't tap a bathroom. That's invasion of privacy. And so you see the same thing in chess. Like, they are trying to, use this loophole. And yeah, so there's many, many instances of that where people will say like, so I think my opponent is cheating by checking the phone in the bathroom in between moves.
I
Yeah.
see. And with that example, like the person who is looking at their phone, like, are they cheating because they're looking up, like, or they're trying to get the phone to analyze their opponent's moves?
Yes, they're basically
Oh.
copying it into a superhuman AI and putting the exact position and then getting the analysis. So they know what to play. And the next move, and potentially even 2 or 3 moves down the line, they can have the computer continue to analyze. And by the way, a lot of the people who cheat in this way are very, very good at chess. So that's how they get away with it. Because if they're terrible at chess, it would be too obvious.
Mm-hmm.
Because the spike in moves would be too great. Like, you're playing like a beginner for the first 10 moves, and then somehow you're playing like a superhuman AI. It's like a big spike. Whereas if you're already really good, then, that spike can mean a lot. And, that's actually something that I think is instructive about our current world as well. Like, if, a fourth grader uses a Claude to write his book report, I mean, the teacher is going to know really quickly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if a experienced writer uses an LLM to write their next novel and kind of like massages it and works with it, it might be harder to detect because they're already a good writer, and now they're just kind of like, combining their own writing with like another writing to like speed things up without disclosing it. And so that's going to be like a lot harder to detect because they're already writing at a high level. It's the same thing in chess.
I see.
It's like the smart cheaters that you're really worried about, because the dumb cheaters will just get caught right away.
I see. Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you for
Yeah.
talking about that. And yeah, just my question is, so I was once told that chess is more of a psychological game rather than a purely logical one. Do you agree with that?
I think it's like psychological, the better you get. Or
Hmm.
it's even almost like a U curve, actually. I feel like it's very psychological in the beginning, and then also when you're really starting out, and then when you're really, really good. But like in between, it's really a combo. It's certainly a combo. I think poker is even more psychological than chess. But
Interesting.
yeah, there is a lot of psychology in it, for sure. I mean, a lot of confidence, that you want to really believe in yourself, because that way you can get more into the flow state. If you
Hmm.
lack confidence, and you're more likely to just be thinking about yourself and worried that you're going to look stupid,
Hmm.
which just really damages your ability to think clearly. So that's where I think a lot of the psychology comes in.
Okay, I see. And you mentioned that like it's psychology first and then logic,
Oh, I think
or
at the very beginning there's a lot of psychology too, because and also at the end, because in the beginning, like if you're really starting out, then there you if you believe in yourself, you have such a way you have there's such like a potential leap, because if you're able to just like protect your pieces and like threaten checkmate, you will just beat your opponent,
hmm
right? So because if you're playing another beginner or something, right? So that can be very, very valuable in the beginning, because it doesn't take much to beat somebody of your same level. And then at the end, it's also really important, like Magnus Carlsen, Fabiano Caruana, these types of top players in the world, psychology becomes very important again, because they're all so good that they need to find the tiniest little edge.
hmm I see. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. John?
So you've written a book about thinking. What are a couple of your other favorite books about thinking? Top one or
Mm.
two, maybe three. Over.
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. Well, I definitely really like the book Range. I was definitely inspired by that, by David Epstein. I
Mhm.
like this kind of concept of being able to flip from field to field, and that being more valuable. Like, I mean, honestly, Thinking Sideways, it has that similar type of reference, right? So that book is about how a lot of the great thinkers and great athletes actually practiced multiple sports in their youth, and that there are exceptions. Like, for instance, Susan Polgar is one of the people he brings up. She's a chess grandmaster. And Tiger Woods, I think, is the other one that were more focused. But then he gives so many counter examples of people who were like practicing tons of different sports, and how they became successful because of that, because one sport gave them a technique into another sport. Yeah. And I also really like, I'm just looking at my bookcase now. Angela Saini wrote these books called Inferior and Superior. And they were basically debunking race and gender pseudoscience and biological determinism. She does just a great job of kind of like tracing the lineage of like race pseudoscience and gender pseudoscience, and showing how these preconceived notions often end up leading to like junk science. Yeah, those are some of my suggestions.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm familiar with Epstein, but I didn't know about the Angela Saini. So thank you.
Yeah, yeah, she's great.
Can I ask a question about the two part? Well, the first one was you were discussing the virtues of randomness. Is that randomness weighed against the parameters in which you're operating? Like if you're black and white is attacking you, you're not going to do something random because you feel
Yeah.
like you have to delay till you counter or throw white off with a random move. Similarly, if you're playing with white and you're attacking, you might not want to do something totally random because you have momentum on your side. So just, weighing the cost of randomness. And then the second one was, your point on identity is, are you better on offense or defense? Does that actually run counter to what you thought previously before getting involved in the game?
Yeah, those are some great questions. I feel that randomness has to be used sparingly in chess. Yes, it's really almost the exception to the rule, right? So that's why I'm talking about like where you're choosing between openings, right? You're not like trying to randomly decide how to get out of check. Because a lot of times one of the answers will lead to checkmate and the other will lead to a good position for you, right? So it's about getting the edge and finding those moments to randomize where, other people don't see them, because it's normally kind of considered, like if you think of the word random, it's got a negative connotation, right? For sure. Like that random guy. Like when somebody says something like that, you're definitely thinking like a guy that's like not cool, right? So I feel like for me, because I see the value of randomness in certain contexts, like in gameplay and even in life, and also, in, gifting us with the ability to be alive, that it was like kind of a random chance that we got here. I kind of like try to flip it and see it as like a potential positive sometimes. But yes, you are correct that usually in chess, you're not using randomness. And did you have a second question? I feel like you had a second one in
Yeah,
there.
the second question was just, based on your own personal
Right.
preference, whether you like to be white or black, depending on the game, and if that was anything different from what your initial parameters were. And I'll just say it for me selfishly is I think my personality is more on being aggressive and being attacking, and I like the idea of being better when you're white, but I play much better under black because it forces discipline on some of your decisions. So that was a nice finding from chess.
Oh, I definitely like playing white. I like being on the offense in chess. I do think in poker it's a little different though. In poker I've often found myself in defensive situations because I notice that a lot of people play very aggressively against me, and so it allows if I play defense, sometimes I'm able to exploit them that way. And I've had some reasonable success in this way in poker. And then I don't know if I were a lawyer, I feel like I would be more likely to be a defense lawyer than a plaintiff. What about you?
Uh, yeah, I mean, you raise a great point on it. I think the interesting one that you drew the parallel to poker is, you can get rewarded much higher for being defensive and waiting for that big counter punch because the payout isn't just one piece or a positional advantage. It's potentially your whole night or your whole afternoon in terms of playing.
Yeah, and then there's this game that I like to play with my friends. I'm sure a lot of you have played like social deduction games like Mafia. And I feel like in a way, being the citizen or the what do they call it in the werewolves, the town, being the citizen or the town is kind of like being defense because you're trying to like save the town and you're trying to defend the town. You're trying to figure out who the bad guys are. And the mafia is more like attack. And in that game, we played so many games over the pandemic that I started to take stats, and I found that I was much better at being a citizen. That I had like the best stats in the game at being a citizen, but the other side was more difficult for me. And I think that kind of aligns with a lot of poker players. They have a harder time bluffing, especially if they have to talk at the same time. Like lying is not comfortable for most people. Most people hate lying, especially if they have to keep the act going for like a long series. And what you'll find is that they do certain things to avoid it. They love changing the topic when they're lying. So, if you want to talk like about something like very minor, like somebody's hair or somebody's necklace, a lot of times people who are lying will do that. They need to switch the topic. It's uncomfortable. Or there's a relief. In poker, you can use this. If there's like a relief when somebody brings up a new topic, that's often somebody who's like lying and uncomfortable. You can kind of see them just like,
Super interesting. We're getting close to the end of the salon, so I'm curious, what's something that we didn't get to cover that you wish people asked you about more often?
mm. Oh no, I mean, I thought you guys asked so many great questions. I mean, I really enjoyed it a lot. I can't think of anything at the moment that you didn't ask me that I wanted to be asked. But is there any questions you didn't get to?
I mean, I think we covered a lot of interesting ground. I
I
have
guess.
a long list, but I want to open it up to the audience again. So, John,
Sure, I'll go. What's next, Jen? What's the next book you want to write? Over.
Well, I was thinking about writing How to Beat Your Mom at Chess with my son because there's a famous chess beginner book called How to Beat Your Dad at Chess. And I think it's time to learn how to beat the moms, the big dog. That's the one. So I definitely got that one in my future. Oh, and there's another one. Well, one of my favorite chess openings is the Ray Lopez. So I thought I could write an introduction to chess openings called the Jennifer Lopez. Yeah. So those are
Nice.
two ideas I have in mind. I always have you always have different ideas in mind. I guess the one thing that I feel like people don't ask me about much actually is they don't actually ask me because poker and chess are so interesting. I feel like people don't ask me about writing that much, and I just really do love writing. Like I like the craft of it. I mean, I feel like I have a long way to go. Like I've always like want to get better, and I think the one interesting thing about writing a book like Thinking Sideways is that you have to sacrifice. There's a saying that you have to sacrifice your darlings. And I feel like that's so true in a nonfiction book. Like you have to sacrifice the points that you want to make but don't fit with the topic, the words that you're using that sound musical but don't convey the right information to the reader. So one thing I found writing this book is I kind of had to throw out the window my idea of like certain types of musical writing because the number one priority was to get the right information to the reader and keep the flow going. Whereas some of my other books, I felt like I was more focused on like the actual musicality of a sentence. Here, I was often just like saying like, no, we just need to like make sure that we're, you know, getting the info out. And that I think was a bit of a wake up call for me. Yeah.
oh, I think you did a great job, and it was very accessible, even for me who hasn't looked at a chessboard in a long time. It definitely also made me more interested to play the game and look at some games and see how people play and how some of the things that you mentioned actually look like on the chessboard. So I'm curious to dig in a bit more after.
Great. Well, if you ever have any tips, if anybody here ever needs any chess advice, feel free to reach out to me. I'm pretty easy to find on socials at Jen Shahade on X and Instagram and YouTube. Yeah, those, I guess the Instagram and X are probably the easiest ways to find me.
And you also have a Substack, which I'll post
Oh
here.
yeah,
If I need to
Substack
take a
is
picture.
yeah, I'm also on Substack and yeah, they have a messaging app there as well. And yeah, I hope if you guys read the book, I hope you like it. And if you do, feel free to leave an honest review on all the platforms, Goodreads and Amazon. That's super helpful for writers. As I don't know if you've noticed, but there's like this trend now that when a writer writes a book that kind of goes um, into the mainstream media, a lot of times a book with a similar name will pop up on Amazon with like a few words changed because the AI can like write a book in 2 days.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so they have this happens to all my friends actually who are writers now. Like my friend wrote a book called like Our Dollar Your Problem, and like the next day like he's on like the Today Show, and the next day there's a book called the Our Dollar Your Problem Workbook.
Oh my gosh, that's terrible.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy. It's terrible. It's like, and it happens to all writers. So it's just like, it's particularly important to like review the books that you read now because that way you signal to people like this is the real thinking sideways.
Um, yeah, well, thank you so much for sharing your evening with us. This was so fun. Again, really enjoyed the book, loved all the stories in it. They were definitely some of my favorite parts. And I look forward to reading more of your writing. I hope you write that book about how to beat your mom at chess. And yeah, excited to see what you work on next.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for coming. I love the questions and the vibes, and thank you so much for hosting. You did a fantastic job.
Yeah, thank you all for joining. Hope you have a great rest of your evening and a great week ahead. Bye.